AI webcam. It's pretty great. Yeah, and
Here it is. All right, counting down.
Oh, yeah. This is great.
I'm going to paste the link here. What
is that coming through? The audio?
Yes, I heard that. Restoration Nation. Hey, this is Andy McCabe, and that's Chris Nordyke, and this is the weekly office hours from Floodlight Consulting Group. Chris, thanks again for being here, man. I've been looking forward to it since the last.
I know, dude. Yes.
So rules of the road here. If you're watching this, look at the comment string, and there's a link. You can come in and ask your question. If you're not comfortable coming in here live and ask the question in the chat here. We're live in the Restoration Rebel group on this window, and we're live everywhere else here on this window. So I will see that comment/question come through. But until we get people warmed up and ready to ask a question, how the hell are you, my friend?
Well, you and I were just talking, right, man? I'm 44 years old, and I just feel like I'm in this season of life where all the really important things are just kind of hitting me. It's like in every weekend when I manage to have a weekend where there's very little work, or whatever, and I just like a different aspect of my life that I feel like I'm just hyper aware of, whether it's marriage or kids. This weekend, I had some really great time in the forest with my 16-year-old son, and that was
16 already. Oh my God.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, I have a daughter who's 19, and I don't see her as often. She's out gallivanting around, figuring out her life. But you know what I mean? And then of course business, and then Floodlight is really, we're in the process. We have been really for the better part of this year, kind of scaling up and hiring and putting, figuring out our systems and processes and doing all the things that many people watching this are figuring out in the restoration company,
Tell me about Floodlight. I think you guys really just came out on the scene a couple of years ago. How long have you been doing that?
Yeah. So it was 3 years in March from when we incorporated Floodlight.
3 years.
Yeah.
And then,
it was kind of
so what led you to that point where you decided as restoration professionals, you and Brandon both were heavily involved in multiple organizations. You were involved with some big players in the restoration space. So how did you come to the realization that, hey, my highest best use is to start a consulting company for restorers?
Well, both of us had this entrepreneurial wiring. Both of us had owned companies prior to coming into restoration and have that orientation. And like both my father and my grandfather were teachers, and I've always loved teaching. And Brandon sort of has this pastoral, like in another life, in another reality, I think there's part of Brandon that thought maybe at some point he'd be a pastor or a preacher. And those that have worked for us and know like that's just kind of who we are. And so I think we wrestled quite a bit with, both of us were at Belfour prior to coming to Floodlight. And Brandon was recruited to do some branch turnarounds in the Pacific Northwest with some distressed branches that were struggling. And I joined the national sales team.
Tell me about the success rate there. What, you don't have to name names, but was he successful? What did that success look like? What does a successful restoration turnaround look like?
Yeah, that's it's tough. I don't know how much to say and not say, but basically it was a branch that, just like any business can kind of get off the rails, was losing money, doing a pretty significant amount of revenue, but was losing money on that revenue. And within 18 months, Brandon turned it around to over $1 million in profit on that same location that had lost money 18 months prior. So very successful. Brandon, I would say having known Brandon now and worked with him professionally for almost 11 years, that is a major skill set for him is change leadership.
Okay.
Which I think honestly really lends itself towards the work we do now. And
right.
And so all of these kind of coalesce. I mean, Brandon and I had a decision point where we're like, okay, do we throw ourselves first into building Floodlight, or do we go start a restoration company?
Right. Because you had all the tools. You had
all the tools
full
and
tool belt,
experience and
all the experience. Yep.
Right. And so I think just it was a moment in time, and that was the direction we took, was let's start a consulting company. We felt like there was a need. And I think part of what drove us establishing Floodlight was the fact that we have hired consultants in our come up in the industry. We've worked with consultants. And we've had that experience, and much of it was very, very helpful and useful. And then there were aspects to it as
I would
well
imagine
where we
was
just
not.
No, yeah. I think we just reached a point with the particular relationship, the company we worked with, another consulting company in our industry, where we wanted more. There was aspects of it that we wanted, and one of those aspects was, we benefited a lot from the programmatic kind of education and teaching. In fact, probably one of the biggest takeaways we got from our work with a consultant was how to do pro forma planning, how to lead from the numbers, how to do a proper WIP review with our recon team, right? How to not only how to develop a pro forma, but really how to lead the business from a P&L. And a proper chart of accounts. And so once we had that stuff on lockdown, in fact, we still, in fact, use many of those best practices with our clients today, right? It's part of our playbook that we've developed for Floodlight. But I think what we felt like we wanted was we wanted more of a battle buddy, more of a partner to sort of journey with us as we were scaling the business. And that wasn't really the way this consulting company was set up. And so, Brandon has kind of joked at times, it felt like we were a drowning person that was being handed a baby, right? I think a lot of people's experience with a consulting company is they're taught a bunch of really great stuff and then given a homework assignment. It's like, hey, we're going to have our session again in 2 weeks. Here's all the things you need to do. And it's like, well, wait, we've got a company to run here too. How are we going to fit all of this change management in and teaching and training of our people?
Right.
And ultimately we figured our way through it. But I think it took longer than it would have needed to take if we'd had a little bit more integration support and help with the execution. We would have accelerated our growth and our change sooner. And so that's how Floodlight came about. We're just like, we think there's a way to do this. Whereas consultants, we can come alongside and help with some of the equipping of the downline team, help with some of the change leadership, provide some of the training and equipping resources so that our clients aren't having to execute. They aren't having to figure out a way to execute on all of it while also just running the current business of the business,
That sounds like...
So that was the theory behind it.
That sounds like several really uncomfortable conversations. You're talking about leadership change, right? AKA someone's getting fired or someone's getting demoted. And how often, I don't, maybe I need to rephrase this to protect the innocent here. Let me back up. I'm a big believer in the fact that the machine or the mindset or the person that got you where you are is not going to be the same machine, mindset, or person that's going to get you where you need to be or want to be. And I got to imagine it's really hard when the number one roadblock to a company's success is the leader.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you approach uncomfortable conversations?
Well, I think it's all about just, first of all, identifying what does that leader want? And then, and once they're really clear on what they want, and sometimes it's, they want to get ready for an exit. There's obviously a lot of steam behind this idea of selling to another company or selling to a private equity company and all these things. And so many people come to us with an exit mindset of, I want to do that. And I want to get one of those big multiples and, whatever. And then many too are still in their hero's journey. They're still in growth and scale mode, but they feel like they're kind of hitting they're not sure how to prioritize. And it's like most of the people come to us, it's not because they don't know what to do. They're not sure how to prioritize and structure their time and what to do first. You know what I mean?
First.
They're not sure what to do first. They're not sure where to put their energy and their investment. They're not sure how quickly, like how to build a sales team. That's another thing that people come to us with is we're trying to grow and scale. Up until this point, all of our businesses come from organic SEO, PPC, our reputation in the market, the owners' relationships, the owners', personality and charisma and whatever in the community. And they realize, okay, now I really need to build a sales team if I want to go far beyond this. And a lot of owners came up through the hustle. They've never been trained how to professionally sell, much less building or training a sales team. Right. And so I think, so they're looking for that. How do I put that in place? How do I build that out effectively? How do I hold people accountable? All that stuff. And so a lot of people are just looking for a partner that's done it before, that's seen the process many, many times, so that they don't have to waste a bunch of energy and money, learning through trial and error. I mean, I think that's probably the quickest way to summarize why we certainly hired a consulting company back in the day.
Exactly. Well, I know that you have done that for a big company, a billion-dollar size company, a couple of regional offices I know you worked for, and a small regional company. You have come into both those size restoration companies and put together a sales strategy and a sales team. What are the commonalities, big and small? What are the common things you have seen between two different, obviously one company's doing hundreds of millions of dollars and one company's doing, $5 or $10 million, but there's got to be some commonalities of how to structure a sales team or strategize around sales. What do you think?
Yeah. Like right now, we've got a client in Alabama that is doing, I think they'll do 1.8 million bucks this year. And then we have another client that'll probably do 60, depending on what happens with hurricanes. And maybe more. And it's far and away, when it comes to sales, it is literally as simple as volume, the amount of activity that the team is doing, the person or the team is doing, and then the quality of the conversations that they're engaging in. Like when you think about it at a very macro level, it doesn't matter if you're $1 million business or a 60, 70, 80, or $100 million business. And like we have a lot of friends, and we've recently begun doing some work for some of the larger big enterprise restorers at Floodlight. And we're seeing the same patterns there. So what are the common weaknesses? Well, the common thing is it's really hard to hire salespeople. Number one, it's hard to get the right people. And of course, the reason why it's hard is that salespeople, whether they're good or not, their orientation is such that they're wooers. And so they tend to be really good at telling you what you want to hear and playing the part and acting the role.
At interviewing,
in the interview process, right?
Yes.
It's so hard to sift through that.
Any interview I'm in, I'm going to kill it.
I know, right? And I think entrepreneurs are the same way. We know how to sell. It's how we got to, it's the charisma, it's how we connect with people and all that kind of stuff. But you have to be really careful with that in terms of the approach you take with interviewing
Mm.
salespeople. So that's a struggle area, no matter how big of a company it is getting the right person that's oriented in the right way. I would say a piece of that too, by the way, is there is a fundamental difference between route marketing or referral partner development and commercial sales.
Oh
And I
man,
think, and that's a big mistake people make is they'll just hire sort of that really um,
that
personable
route salesperson.
route sales kind of persona. And in commercial sales, it doesn't work very well. And so that's a problem. So it's, we got to hire the salespeople. But then here's the other thing that's a real challenge in our industry is it's difficult to manage salespeople
Mm.
in when we're selling services. You can train them and onboard them really well, and we have a process and we have resources for that. But then I think the other thing that a lot of owners really struggle with is, how do I hold them accountable? How do I know what they're actually doing? I can use
Mm.
vehicle trackers to see
Right.
if they're doing the volume of activity to one degree or another. I can see that they're actually getting out in the market and they're stopping and starting their vehicle. That tells me that there's some
Mm.
kind of activity cadence that they're doing. But how do I manage the quality? And
Yeah.
what should they be saying and talking about? That is the part that is
Mm.
universally difficult.
Yeah.
Managing what are people saying to prospects when they get in front of them, and then what is the sales process when they get a live one, when they get somebody who's interested or has some pain with a different contractor. What is the most reliable process for turning that person into an actual customer? Um,
Mm.
I continue to be surprised at how much of a black box that is within our industry.
Oh,
Our industry does not have a foundation of sales. You know what I mean?
no. No. Well, because we haven't traditionally haven't needed to.
Right.
Traditionally, all we've had to do is hang out a shingle and get a phone number that works,
Yeah.
right? And then disasters happen, and you just kind of stumble in it. I think that's how the industry started. The industries didn't start with, let's go start this whole other thing and do restoration. Industry
Yeah.
started with carpet cleaners.
Yeah.
And the carpet cleaners just kept getting call after call after call. My house was full of water, and it just kind of evolved. There's no sales there. You're just there. You're just I mean, yeah, when you're one of four numbers in a phone book, it's not a sales process. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think traditional or even organized intentional sales training is
Yeah.
incredibly lacking. We don't do it as an industry.
Well, and here's the other thing I'm seeing in the industry, man. There's a lot of systems out there that, and we're starting to
Mm.
see more of people's, that are coaching or providing, consulting or training around this subject. And what I continue to see is what Brandon and I encountered and we struggled with too when we were building a regional independent restoration company is um, there's a huge orientation around the activities.
Mm.
Like what are the KPIs? What is the tracking,
So
system?
many contacts,
So
so
many
many phone
contacts, so many
calls.
sales meetings, and whether we call them probing meetings or whatever, like there's these systems for we have this kind of meeting, we have these kind of questions, then the next follow-up, and this is what follow-up looks like.
Mm.
And those systems, I think the great benefit to those systems is it does provide some kind of structure, something that
Something.
you can hold your people accountable to. And that is
Yeah.
beneficial. And in our Floodlight system, we also have that. We call it 55 and 1. It's 55
Mm.
and 1. And you really could apply this same baseline activity matrix probably to a route sales role, but it's really optimized for commercial. It's 50 fresh contacts per week, 5 formal
Mm.
sales meetings, and a minimum of one networking function every single week. And
Mm.
there's a lot of companies and systems that try to, or I think present a much more complex sort of matrix of different kinds of activities and differentiating between, say, certain types of meetings and so forth. And I have just found through not just my restoration sales background, but selling for Cintas, also doing B2B selling as a State Farm agent, selling business insurance and so forth, that most of the time we overcomplicate our
Yes, we
sales
do.
process. And
Yes, we do.
we can get a lot of compliance to a whole variety of activities and behaviors, but that isn't necessarily getting us closer to a sale. And I think the other thing too, that when we hold people accountable to, when we put too much focus on the activities, what we end up having with a lot of sales reps is we end up with a pencil whipped report. We end up with people going through the motions because they lack confidence. They're putting in the activity, because that's actually the easy part. Asking people the right questions and getting into the right kind of conversations is actually for most sales reps, the difficult part of selling in our business. Just driving around and doing door knocks and handing people sales collateral.
That's not sales. That's advertising.
It's advertising, and it's an aspect of sales, but it's the easy part if you have the right person on your team. And of course, that sometimes is the problem when people have call reluctance and they are wary of doing cold calls and drop-ins and talking to people they don't know. Well, that's something that most of the time can't be overcome, and you just hired the wrong person.
It's a non-starter. Yeah.
But if you have somebody that's out there they're going through the motions, they're logging their activities, they're putting their notes in Salesforce, they're doing all that stuff, and they're still not producing at the level that they ought to be producing, which in our world, our baseline production level for a commercial sales rep is $1.5 million. You want to quickly get a sales rep. Now, I'm not talking about CAT. I'm not talking about national sales. I'm talking about organic, local, direct sales team that are going out and selling property managers, chief engineers, directors of public works, like our local commercial sales operations. That is your first baseline that you want to get somebody to. And if you've got somebody who...
Why is that? Draw a line back to, I think I know why that is. Draw a line back to P&L. The P&L.
Yeah.
Why does that 1.5 million work?
Well, in a lot of ways, man, it's arbitrary. It's an arbitrary number based on a return on investment. I want to see, it depends on the market. And so I want to see with anybody I hire, and I forget who originally told me this back when I was running my State Farm business. Basically, anybody you hire, you want a 10x return on investment, because once you figure in the amount of the time, the payroll burden, the other overhead and burden that you apply to the base salary and the commissions and everything else, right? I want that person that I'm paying, say, an $80,000 base salary to, and then commission and then benefits and all those things. That $80,000 person is really a $150K person.
That's right. That's right.
And I want a 10x return on that money. That's the kind of return on investment that gives you ample margin to grow and continue expanding and to make a nice return on, right?
Yeah. And that's why, and I used, when I was with the big company I was with for a while, we were always at 10%. It's like, that was our net. So we knew no matter what activity we were doing throughout the year, if our net was 10%, that was our return.
Yeah.
So, I was doing the same math in your head. When you said 1.5 million, I was like, okay, well, with burden fully loaded and salary and a car, that person's 150 grand a year cost.
Yep.
So if you're not doing 1.5 as a salesperson, you're not even keeping your own lights on. Let alone helping your business.
It's not, and you just can't grow. It's like here's the problem, man. It's existing mindset. It's the paradox of success. We think because we have money in the bank and because we have a 10% net or even a higher net, and it's working. We have the nice truck, we have a nice house, we finally achieved some of these things that everybody wants to achieve with their business. the assumption we make is that what we're doing is working. You know, like it's optimal, or it's good. It must be okay because it's working, right? And I can't tell you how many of our clients that we come across when we start digging into their sales team and the actual direct revenue that those sales reps are producing. And often they're paying 60, 70, 80, 100,
It's a negative number.
150,000 person for a sales rep that is producing 300,000, 500,000, 700,000, and has been for a period of time. And they're not technically losing money on that person. And so they don't understand. They don't understand what the opportunity cost is of their current situation. It's like, man, you are doing well. Congratulations. This is awesome what you've built and achieved. But they don't realize that their actual results, just by fine tuning some of these kinds of things, their standards and expectations and the roles that they already have in place, the GP margins that they could and should be achieving but aren't, right, could very easily move that EBITDA from 10% to 20%. And you do that simple napkin math, right? And the person's like, holy shit. You mean instead of me having $200,000 left over in my bank accounts from what we did last year, that I could have had 400 or 450 or 500,000. And what would that mean for either my own personal financial situation or my ability to reinvest in the business? Like, how many fleet vehicles could you have expanded with? What kind of money could you spend on PPC that could have driven more phone calls, right? Could you have hired another salesperson or two this last year if you'd had your margins in the place that they should have been, if your salespeople had been producing at a level that other companies do, right? So it's oftentimes like part of what, when people hire us, man, is they're hiring us to get our perspective from the dozens and dozens and dozens of companies we're working with. Cause we see that, man. I have a client right now.
They're not hiring you necessarily. They're hiring the experiences and hard lessons you've learned over the last, 15, 20 years.
They're hiring our eyeballs and our consultants' eyeballs to be like, wait, I've seen this before and I've seen it work this way. And I've seen, man, it's pattern recognition. And what you realize is it opens your eyes up to the possibility. And then we, as Floodlight, we can relay that possibility to our client who they're not there yet, but gosh, we have this, like, I've had this conversation so many times with, say, a $3 or $5 million company. And I'm talking to them about the systems, processes, investment, the salespeople of another client in a different market that's at 12 million. And a lot of times it's just a compare and contrast. It's like, here's where you're at. Here's the things you're doing. Here's the org chart you have in place. And here's the thing that $12 million company is doing right now and prioritizing and investing their money in. And then there's a choice there, right? There's an opportunity to be like, okay, let's do that thing.
That looks nice. That looks nice. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it often is that simple. But so anyway, so the sales thing, kind of back to where I started, it's a matter of what are we teaching our people to do? What kinds of conversations do they need to be engaging in? And I just think I see this all the time as we spend way too much time dialing in the activities. And unfortunately, especially if you have a bigger team, and generally the people that will hire, sales trainers and hire programs and stuff like that, oftentimes they'll have a bigger team, and they'll make the mistake of judging the effectiveness of that program or that training based on the outcome with one or two of their sales reps. One or two of their sales reps now, the sales went through the roof. And it's like, well, those one or two people would have been successful no matter what you put in front of them,
Yep.
But the reality is the rest of the team is hyper focused on this, these points that they get when they do this kind of activity and their point total at the end of the week. But the revenue is never quite catching up to all of the things they're doing in activity that they're notating in their CRM. And it's like, why is that? Well, most of the time it's because we're not initiating the right kinds of conversations with our prospects. That's my experience.
Mm. What are the right kinds of conversations?
Well, this comes back to I like you, dude. I've had a very eclectic background. I've done a lot of different entrepreneurial things and sales jobs and different stuff coming up into restoration. And before I got into this industry, I thought I wanted to be a technology guy.
Okay.
And I remember going to this entrepreneurs hangout of techie folks, and this serial entrepreneur was talking and doing a sales workshop. And right in the middle of it, he had all these cool slides about SaaS and technology sales and stuff like that. And he came to this one slide and he just stopped the whole presentation. He's like, guys, you know what? Honestly, I could skip everything else I'm going to talk about and just tell you this. He said, there's only ever three things that any of us are selling. There's only three things to sell in this world. There's aspirin, there's vitamins, and there's vaccines.
Okay. Yeah.
And he said, aspirin's the pain reliever, vitamins, bigger, faster, stronger, and the vaccines avoid a calamity, or it's going to, if something really bad happens, it's going to be a lot less bad. Right. That's what any of us are selling at any given point. And he said, if you in your entrepreneurial ventures or future jobs ever have the option, always sell the pain reliever. He said, shorter sales cycle, much more emotional purchase. People are so much more motivated to get out of pain than they are to obtain pleasure, or they are to get better or faster or anything else. They want to get out of pain first. And I never forgot that. And I applied that. I also, that was a big part of my training that I got at Cintas Corporation, which has one of the best B2B sales training programs. They're known for it. It was an incredible training ground for me back when I went through that in my late 20s. And so we've built our Floodlight methodology around that. And we had to figure it out as we went. When Brandon and I got into the industry and we started shifting our business into commercial, there were no training resources, none, for commercial selling in our industry. None. It was all repackaged and repurposed route marketing stuff. And so what we started to do was to really apply that pain solution or advisory selling methodology that most other service verticals use very effectively.
You're selling to a potential pain, right? Because they're not, vast majority of people you're selling to or marketing to aren't feeling that pain right now, right? The hurricane hasn't hit yet. The pipe hasn't broken yet. How do you sell something that, are you selling the anticipation of shit hitting the fan? What are you doing?
Yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. But now with commercial though, but it's more than that. It's actually more organic and it's more natural than that. What I do is by using pain-seeking questions, and I'll give an example here in a minute, I can help that prospect, who most of those prospects have had prior damage event experience. If I'm talking to a property manager or a chief engineer, at some point in their career,
if they have any gray hair at all, yes,
certainly. And if they've been in the industry for more than a minute, right? You think about how high propensity most of the customer segments we're in, property management, senior living, hotels, there's always some version of a damage event happening. So they've experienced that. And I think more broadly, they've almost certainly had experience with other contractors, and the pain and the frustration that they have with, say, a roofer or an electrician or plumber or landscaping, exterior building wash, power, like all of the different service contractors that exist, most of them are not great at customer experience and running the business of their business. They're not great at billing,
because they have the same problem we have.
Exactly right. They know the trade craft. Yeah. They over-index on the trade craft, and they don't have the business management and those kind of things in place. So my point is that what we do in our sales system, it's actually very, very simple. It's asking specific questions that reference past experience with contractors and asking specific questions that we know have a high likelihood of getting a yes answer. So here's a pain-seeking question. Here's
Just
a pain-seeking question.
Okay.
Okay, anybody watching this, all 10,000 of you Restoration Rebels that are potentially watching this or going to watch this, get your salesperson to watch what I'm about to say.
Yes,
So
listen up, folks.
This is the gold standard pain-seeking question, or PSQ, okay? You and I, okay, Andy, you and I meet on the sidelines at our kids' soccer game, okay? And I find out that you're in property management. And because we do that normal soccer dad chatter of,
Right,
so anyway,
right.
who's your son? Because none of us know the names of the other players on our team most of the time. Who's your son? Oh, he's that blonde kid out there. Hey, right on. Mine's the, redhead over there, da-da-da. Hey, so anyway, what do you do, man? Oh, you're in property management. Right on. Wild. I'm in construction. Well, really, I'm in disaster restoration, kind of a niche, So property management, huh, dude? Listen, let me ask you a question. Most of my property management clients, they tell me that like their number one frustration with contractors is that when they've got a project on site, they never know what the hell's going on. They feel like they're always having to chase down the project manager of that company to get an update on their project that they can share with their owner client, who's probably breathing down their neck about what's happening with their units, or just to share an update on their weekly conference call with home office, whatever. Is that something you've dealt with? Right? Very organic shop talk. It's not salesy. It's like, this is how professionals like talk to each other, right?
Right.
And knowing what you know from the industry, right? What is that property manager guy that I'm talking to on the sidelines? What is he likely going to say when I ask that question?
He's going to say, "Oh, let me tell you."
Oh my gosh, right? Like at the very least, he's going to be like, "Oh God, yeah." Yeah, he's gonna be like, "Oh God, yeah. I was just dealing with a roofer last week, and I freaking sent 3 emails to finally get a response 2 days later about this or that, right?" And of course, oftentimes when we're selling that way in the field, we have like a polo shirt. Like people know we're not just a contractor; we're a disaster restorer. And so many times when we ask that question of a property manager, a chief engineer, a director of operations, a plant manager, whoever's in front of us, this response is going to be the same.
Yeah.
And many times they're even going to be like, "Oh man, yeah, we use so-and-so XYZ restoration. We have a national account with them. And yeah, we never know what the hell's going on. It's like 3 or 4 emails before we finally get a reply." And right. So the purpose of that pain-seeking question is it helps solve for a really common problem with salespeople across not just our industry, but all the service verticals, which is salespeople love to talk about building relationships, and I consider myself a really relational seller. Yeah, I'm a relational seller. And it's like, but the people that sing that from the rooftops the most often are the ones that create disappointing results. It's often the thing that, if you have a sales rep, by the way, if you're an owner and you're watching this and your sales rep is underperforming, you're disappointed in the results. And whenever you talk to them about, "Hey, so when are we going to see a job from that property management company you've been calling on and you've been telling me about?" "Oh, well, I'm building the relationship any day now." Chances are your sales rep is having too much soccer mom, soccer dad conversation. And the harsh reality that I think most of us learn at some point as we start doing more and more commercial sales is that plant manager, that chief engineer, that regional portfolio manager, that regional maintenance manager, they're not looking for friends.
No.
They're not looking for more friends. They're not looking for more bar buddies. That is not what they're looking. They're looking to optimize their business, reduce hassle, reduce any stress or chaos that they have with certain vendors of theirs, and or save money. Those are the reasons why operational leaders change vendors. And so what you do is you get as quickly as possible to where you do a job for that prospect. And then by doing what you said you were going to do and delivering on the promise, then you start building a friendship out of trust and reliability. That's how friendship is built in the commercial space. You don't make a friend beforehand by boozing and schmoozing or showing your face all the time. You build it by identifying a problem as quick as possible, explaining in shop talk how you are going to solve that problem and provide a better service level and or save them money and or be more efficient and or make them look better to their clients or to their boss, etc. And then as quickly as possible by doing a job for them, you prove that your company does what you say it does. And that's how you develop loyalty, trust. And then you take them out for lunch after the first job and be like, hey, I want your feedback. How do we perform compared to other contractors you worked with? And listen to what they say and communicate that back to your leadership team and your operations partners. So you know what I mean? That's how you build friendships as a salesperson. You cannot make sales primarily, in our business especially, you are not going to get new accounts over the finish line by being a good friend. Now, there's exception to this, dude. I just have to highlight this, man. There are other people that are better looking than me and funnier and more charismatic than me. And I'm serious in this. Like, I think the problem though is that all of us have either met salespeople like that or we've had that unicorn salesperson that has a shit process, but because they're so attractive or charismatic, people just love them. They're magnetic. And I guess probably some of us all have a little piece of that, but I can't rely on that in my sales process. Like that's not how I've won over the years. Like I've won by getting into shop talk conversations with people. I'm really good at this sort of discovery conversation and asking questions like that. And so I get people to trust me because I'm not doing the cheerleader route marketing, show and tell kind of process. I've won by asking these kind of questions and getting into shop talk with people. And that has proved to be the most reliable sales process, not just for myself. So getting back to that pain-seeking question, because that's where it all comes from. When I ask them that question, what I'm starting to do is I'm starting to stack yeses and not bullshit tricky questions like you see some YouTube videos about of this really clever process. And I'm not going to
car salesman.
Well, yeah. I'm not. And there's so many of these like sales gurus and where it's all about objection handling and asking these clever questions. I hate that stuff. I hate that stuff because I think most operational leaders, maybe that works with your typical Mr. and Mrs. Joneses, like consumer direct selling, where it's all about kind of controlling the conversation and being clever and cornering them and all these things. I hate it as a consumer myself, but whatever. I think it's about, it's much more about asking questions where we know are going to get a yes result because of how our industry works and how much our competitors, because we know how hard it is for us to run a restoration company. Like it's freaking hard. And I don't care how good you are, man. We work with some really, really good clients that are very sophisticated, have great processes and procedures in place, and they are still not perfect. It's like the best companies are awesome 85% of the time. The very best of the best, bro. And anybody here who wants to argue with me about that, like just invite me out. Let's do an on-site.
No one's batting 1,000.
We all fall down. We all fall down in this business.
Yeah.
And so again, going back to the we never know what the hell is going on pain point. That is going to be true across all contractors. And not just restoration, but it's going to be true of most. And so when I get them to say yes there, I get my first yes, and that kind of opens up a dialogue. But it's not just a dialogue based on soccer mom, soccer dad chatter. it's a dialogue based on their past experience, like their real
Right.
lived experience. And I've just helped them tap into the irritation and frustration of, yeah, we never know what the hell's going on. And the reason why that's so painful and irritating for a property manager or a chief engineer or somebody like that is because when they have a damage event on property or a capital expense project, they have a contractor there repainting their buildings or something else, is that's just one of the things they have going on their property in that moment. They got a
Right.
bunch of normal shit they're dealing with.
It's a living organism.
Yeah, they're budgeting. They've got conference calls. They're training and equipping their team of, their assistant property manager. They're doing lease up. They're doing turns. They're doing all these things in addition to chasing down project managers to get a job update on other random projects they have on the property. Right. So it's meaningful. It's shop talk. I'm tapping into something that they actually care about, and so, but how we respond to that, their answer is really important. And again, this comes down to the quality of conversations we're having, because let me give you version 1 of what most sales reps do. So even when sales reps accidentally ask a good question and they get an affirmative answer and a door opens up, the untrained, uncoached sales reps,
they're going to stumble right through that door,
will often respond to that question out of ego and be the white knight, I call it. And I have actually done this. I don't want to be holier than thou. When I first got in the industry, I'm a very competitive person. And as I was getting my sea legs in this industry, I responded this way at times. Because one, I really believed in Brandon and the rest of our team. And so I was all hoorah about how awesome we are and we're the best and everything else. And one of the effects of that type of culture, it was a very healthy culture, but as a sales rep, is when I heard somebody say, yeah, we never know what the hell's going on, I'm always having to chase down the project manager. Here was my response early days. Oh, really? Oh, that's terrible. I can't believe they didn't communicate well. Well, listen, you have to give us a try. Like, you have to try us to understand communication is one of our company values, right? Like, it's up on our training wall. See, look, it's on the back of our business card. I'd love for you to give us a shot. You got to try my team. We care about that stuff.
That trout is going to spit that hook every single time.
And I just was unaware of it though, bro. But listen, I think we've all made that mistake. We've all been so wrapped up in our company culture and how awesome we are. And I think we all believe it. But what we lose track of, and listen, those people that are watching like, oh my God, that's so ridiculous. Well, look, I promise you, when was the last time you were out with your sales rep? Because I guarantee you probably have a sales rep out there saying some version of that in their sales pitch. So, but I think it's just a matter of we get caught up in our own story.
Version 2. Okay, what's version 2?
Here's the more productive approach. Okay. First of all, we want to lead with humility, because number one, an operations leader that we're selling to, they aren't going to believe that bullshit. They may still like the person in front of them. Because maybe, again, you have a great sales rep who's very personable and charming and believable and everything else. And so your operational leader is going to respond to that version 1, like, okay, good for you, whatever. But they're going to discount it and dismiss it.
Yeah.
But humility, what an operational leader actually wants to hear is the truth. And so the truth of the matter is, hey, listen, I hear this, like I said, I hear this all the time from my property managers. So it's no surprise that you guys have had that experience. And I do not want to say that we're perfect, that we got this thing all figured out, because we're a people business too. Okay. But let me tell you about a system that we put in place to address this communication piece. Because systems are what solve problems, right? And so we put in place, however many months or years back, what we just call our 24-hour job update. And it's simple. It's not sexy. It's not fancy. It's an email template that we save in our PM's email account. And our department heads, they hold all of our project managers accountable to sending one of these 24-hour job updates to every single one of our property management clients every day, Monday through Friday. Period. And that simple update answers the questions: what happened today? What's happening next? And are there any questions or concerns we need to deal with?
Are we still going to be done when we said we'd be done?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Or do we off our timeline? Are there trades that we're having difficulty, scheduling in?
Yep.
Do we have back ordered countertops? Whatever it is, right? Or simply on the mitigation side, the initial response, right? Are we not going to have anybody there today because we're waiting on asbestos samples to come back before we tear into the affected material, right? Like all of that kind of stuff. And so after I explained the 24-hour job update very concretely and specifically, not, oh, we're really good at communication, right? No, specifically, what's the system or process we've committed to as a team that's going to help us solve for that issue? And then after I explain that, I have an opportunity to ask the golden question. And the golden question is simply, hey, if XYZ Restoration or your other contractors, right, if they were consistently using a system like that, do you think you and your team would have had a better experience in the past? And again, what am I likely going to get from them? A yes, right? Yeah. And oftentimes I'm going to get a shop talk yes, which is like, oh God, yeah. You guys do that? And it's like, yes, we do. But again, my posture is always humility. No matter how badass we are and how locked in we have that process, I never want to be the white knight. One, because operational leaders don't trust it, because they know how messed up their own internal systems are. Like nobody has perfect processes. No one. And so they don't trust when people talk about how rad they are. So instead, I'm always trying to talk concretely about the processes and systems and people on our team that we're deploying to solve for this pain point that we happen to be talking about. And then oftentimes I'm effusive. I go overboard actually talking about how we're not perfect because I'd rather underpromise and overdeliver because, again, business people trust other people who are honest. Business people are always looking for the gap. Purchasing
100%.
people, operational leaders, they're always looking for, okay, where's the lie? Where are they fudging on this?
Well, that brings me to what just crossed my mind is, as I'm wondering, as we're winding down here, our office hour is about up. Time. We got to understand that when we're talking about commercial sales, chasing that building manager, that property manager, whatnot, every single system in that building has 1 or 2 or 10 vendors trying to sell that building.
Yeah.
So you are restoration. You want to be the restoration vendor, but there's a plumbing guy, there's a carpet guy, there's a drywall guy. There are 100 different vendors vying for this person's time so they can have their shot at selling them something.
Yeah.
Can you speak to respecting that person's time?
Well, yeah, man. I mean, it's so core to commercial selling is that you want that prospect to think of you as a peer and a partner, not a sales rep. As quickly as possible, you want to establish yourself with that voice. Here's another way, because I think sometimes it's easier to talk about the behaviors of what does that look like. What do peers do versus sales reps? Well, I think just in terms of posture, like I try to think of it, I want to come alongside somebody rather than transact across the table, right? So an example of this is I always try to use language of that lets the person know that I understand their environment, or at least I'm trying to understand it. So even as simple as when I do a cold call, I'll check in with them with my body language. I'll get their eye contact as I'm coming into the lobby of their business or in their office or whatever. I'll get their eye contact and I'm looking. Is this person stressed? Are their eyes darting as though they're going somewhere else, like they're on a warpath to something else? And if that's the case, there's a lot of times where I'm going to abort mission out of respect that I can tell I caught this person off guard. They are on a mission somewhere else. And I may, just depending on the context, I may, hey, listen, I can tell you're on a mission and I obviously don't have an appointment. Is there a certain time of day or day of the week that is a better time for me to stop in and introduce myself? That is something that a peer or a colleague would say to somebody else of their role, right? And versus a sales rep is going to try to demand attention. I don't want to be that. I don't want them to have that experience with me. Here's one other example of how we do this. When I was chasing a hotel prospect, Jennifer Williams, real name. She worked for a hospitality group that's based in Portland. They owned, not based in Portland. They were based out of Washington, D.C., but had 2 properties at the Portland Hotel, an Embassy Suites and a Holiday Inn, 2 really rad prospects. And she was this young whippersnapper GM. And she answered the phone one day when I called to schedule a site walk. It was probably my 3rd interaction with her. And I was calling to set up that site walk with her where I was really going to like next steps, and she stopped me. I introduced, she's like, Chris, I got to stop you. Like, look, man, listen, I like you. I'm pretty sure we're going to want to use your company and whatever. She said, but I've got to educate you on our industry here. Because if you're calling other GMs today, I don't want you to get the same response. She said, look, you're calling me on a Monday, the first week of the month. Do you have any idea what I'm doing right now? And I didn't. And she said, look, I'm closing out last month. But not only that, it's a Monday. So I've got
going to happen all week.
All my business groups are checking in. All of our banquet space rentals and conferences and trade shows and all that kind of stuff. All of that stuff is kicking off today. I've had meetings with every single one of my department heads. So far this morning, I've got 3 conference calls for closing out last month. Later on this afternoon, it's a terrible time to call me. And she said, then on Friday this week,
did you such a huge favor. Wow.
Right?
Okay.
And so ultimately she went on to tell me things like, look, the best time when I buy products or I change vendors is the middle of the month, middle of the week. That is your optimal time to have my attention and to sell me. Now, here's the key thing, dude, the key takeaway. How did I leverage that knowledge moving forward? Because I never stopped referencing that information. I still to this day, it's like a core part of how I teach people how to sell.
100%.
Because one takeaway is, will you never call on hotels the first part of the week or the first part of the month? But that's actually not the lesson. The lesson was this, is for every time that I called a hotel GM or cold called a hotel or whatever on a Monday or a Tuesday or on a Friday, because there was more intel she gave me about the end of the week and the end of the month. But whenever I would go and drop in on a hotel during those timeframes of the month, I would lead with, like on the phone, for example, when I called Scott Youngblood, one of my next prospects, I said, hey, Scott, listen, I called him on like a Tuesday early in the month. Hey, Scott, listen, I know you're probably really overwhelmed closing out the previous month. And I know you probably still got business groups and stuff checking in today. If there's a better time for me to call back, I can do it. And what do you think a lot of times the response was? 50-50. Sometimes people would say, oh, dude, you're exactly right. Can you call me back at a different time? That's a win, because now I know when to call them back, right? Or they would say, oh, no, I'm good, actually. Yeah, I got a lot of that stuff done earlier today. But what I did was in that moment is I established myself as somebody who understands their business.
And part of what time,
and so I established the relationship based on, I'm more of a peer. I'm somebody who understands their business. And I created an opening for me then to ask more shop talk kinds of questions or pain seeking questions that are going to lead me further and further down this path until eventually, and hopefully in pretty short order, I'm going to be on a site walk, walking around their hotel, shoulder to shoulder with them, while I learn more and more about their business, which gets me closer and closer to that first notice of loss.
Reminds me of a very similar. Thank you for that, Chris. This is solid gold. I was, as I told you guys when I sat down in Corvallis with you guys, I was a stop and drop sales guy. I saw every agent in the Portland metro office, metro area, every 3 months. I saw every
Yeah.
single agent, and I'll never forget. I walked in. The guy was obviously busy. He was obviously on the phone. But I was young and like, my whole goal back in those days was to get a handshake. If I had a handshake out of every interact, I was like, eh. So I was sitting around waiting for the handshake. But so my one hand was free for the handshake. My other hand, what was in my other hand? A notebook, a pen. And I'll never forget this guy. He looks up and he gives me one of these and then turns around. He had a closet behind him. It was a smaller office with the bifold doors, and he peeled back the bifold doors. And what did I see? Stacks and stacks and stacks of these notebooks in every color of the rainbow. Right?
Yeah.
There was a Serve Pro stack, and there was a Service Master stack, and right next to that was the red and black stack of Dow Columbia. And I looked down at mine, and I looked at the stack of my notebooks he already had, and it changed my entire approach to sales. I was like, this guy doesn't need my fucking notebook.
Yeah.
This guy doesn't need my pen. He doesn't really need, I need the handshake. So I was coming at the entire sales process from a position of wanting, of neediness. I was needy before he walked in the door because I needed that handshake. Anyway, back at this guy didn't, we get hung up on, I think this goes back to your initial point on running it strictly by the activity numbers. You're missing the most important part of the sales process.
Yeah.
Because you can't, there's no quality in that quantity. You got to figure out how to figure out what the quality is. So Floodlight, let's close it out on that. Floodlight, you guys have systems to help better quantify the quality of sales activities?
Yeah, we do. And how to manage the quantity as well, right? I mean, because that's part of it. It's one leg of the stool, so to speak. That's really, really important. So we have our commercial sales master course that we've developed, and it kind of encompasses everything we've been talking about. And all of our one-on-one consulting clients, that's just part of the offering, is that everybody gets onboarded with the commercial sales master course. This is the other issue we see in the industry, is that we silo the sales function. And with us, we've just learned at Floodlight, it's really, really important that, particularly if a company is doing commercial sales, commercial services, that the entire leadership team needs to go through that commercial sales master course, because sales is not just activities and word tracks. It is a collaboration from the initial lead gen and relationship development on throughout the whole entire customer timeline. It's just different than residential operations. And so we use that. That's an asynchronous onboarding tool that we use. It's about 12 hours of video-based education and quizzes and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And so that's how we onboard our one-on-one consulting clients. And then we've had we have a lot of people who will purchase that standalone. So far, we've had over 300. I want to say we're up to 340 people go through that commercial sales master course. And that's kind of our primary sales tool. And then we also are big users of know-how. And so we have the Floodlight Arsenal, our know-how hub, where we've also got
armory.
Yeah. So we've also got, that's where we store all of our Floodlight standards and SOPs and systems and processes. One of which I just actually, in fact, if anybody watches this and they'll DM me, they can either DM me on Facebook or on LinkedIn. I'll send them the know-how that I built around the pain-seeking questions. because I have
Nice.
a know-how with video tutorials I created. And I'd be happy to share that with folks around both agency conversations on the referral partner development side. And then on the commercial side, I give examples of both. So
Okay.
that's something that people
Thank
could
you
do.
for that.
Yeah.
Nice.
So,
well, we'll link it up. I think we're over time, but next week, what do you think? Let's go an hour later on next Monday. See if we can catch somebody. Nobody asked any questions. Abby was here in the chat, but she's busy. She wasn't able to join in.
Okay.
I saw David. David, I saw you. You're there. But we didn't get a lot of interaction with questions from the crowd. So let's push it off an hour. What's your schedule look like next week?
I think
we could talk about this offline. We could.
Yeah.
Hold on, what am I doing? I'm doing secretarial stuff here.
No,
Chris,
I can do
thanks
that.
for being here. Okay, let's plan on that.
Okay.
And awesome. So we'll do a better job between the two of us of getting the word out that this is a resource available to the Restoration Nation and the Restoration Rebels in particular. We want to help you solve your restoration problems. We are uniquely positioned with our combined experience to really go deep and solve some pain points. I like that. I'm gonna end with that. Have the right questions and ask pain-seeking questions. I love that. I love that.
PSQs, baby.
PSQs. Okay. Well,
okay, Rebels.
Any last words?
Watching. What's that?
Any last words?
Oh man, no, you caught me.
I put you on the spot.
I wasn't prepared for that.
I wasn't prepared.
Oh,
all right.
All right.
It was good. Chris, we'll see you next week. All right, man.
All right, see you. Bye-bye.